hello again. It seems that I yet again forgot to screen record my composite and Photoshop editing of this particular piece. And I got such a great response last time when I showed the layered compilation that I thought I'll just go ahead and do that again for you guys. So let me start by showing you what we started with. So these are the two images I worked from. This particular picture is one that I took of a pocket watch that I purchased from our local Hobby Lobby quite a while ago, actually. And I used a macro lens. I propped it up near some window lights so that I could get some really nice directional light on it. And I knew I was going to cut everything around it out, so I didn't really care what the background looked like. I mostly just wanted to do my best to get everything really crisp and sharp on the watch face. So that was the image one that I used. Image two is this. So I had already had this backdrop set up for a photo shoot for someone else, so I just went ahead and I had this image in my mind and went ahead and took some shots of myself that I thought might overlay well with the watch face. So this is actually a wrapping paper roll that all that was left was the cardboard roll, and I figured it would be about the same width as the watch hands. And I got everything set up and took a couple different shots till I found the one I liked, and this one was the one that I liked the most. So to create this piece, what I did was I started with just the watch image. So let me turn all of these layers off real quick. And you're going to see there are a lot of layers that are already shut off. So here is the original clock image. And what I did was I masked off the image and kind of cut it out. Now you'll see this is kind of a rough cut out, but that's okay because I did multiple layers of this because I'm weird like that. On the second layer, what you're going to see here is that this minute hand disappears. So there it's gone. This is because I wanted to be able to move it because that was the arm I was going to grab. The next watch layer, I just made it bigger. I didn't want it to feel quite so much like a pocket watch. I wanted it to take up most of the frame, so that's why I went ahead and enlarged it. And then for the final layer, I refined this edge. And it's not going to be super noticeable, but if you kind of look along the edges here, you can see it's a tiny bit jagged. And obviously I don't want that. So for the final piece, I smoothed those edges out as best I could. In order to cut these things out, I used just a masking layer and a paintbrush and just painted out the area I did not want in the picture. So that was the final cut for the watch, and I did add a drop shadow layer. Since the sun is coming from this direction, I made sure that the directionality of the shadow was also coming from a similar angle, and then I added some distance to it so that it wasn't right underneath the watch face, but off to one side. So the next thing I did was I took that second hand that I erased and made it its own layer. And you can see I brought it down to the bottom because obviously I'm going to be standing on the ground, so I needed to have that minute hand down here. And I also used a masking layer for that as well, since it was just a rectangular marquee that I cut the watch hand out with. Okay, so then you have me, and I just pulled this image straight in from the original image. I did a quick mask on it, but obviously I need to be smaller, so I created another layer because I'm weird like that and shrunk myself down to size. Now I did have to shift this minute hand around till it was at the right angle for my hands, where it's still connected at the center point in the middle. And the other thing that I had to do, weirdly enough, was create a separate layer for my fingers up here, because in the original layer, my hand up there was just a little too closed for the thickness of the watch hand. So there they are. The next thing I did was I added a curve layer. I love curve layers. Well, actually, I lie. I added the background layer. So this is the black background I chose, and actually this one I believe is just a free grunge bundle of papers that I got off the internet, and I felt like this was just a little too distracting, so I softened it just a little bit. I used a Gaussian blur on it. Then I added my curve layer, which brought it down to this. So with this curve layer, I'll show you. I brought the highlights and the shadows down because obviously before there's a lot of contrast there. So by bringing the highlights and the shadows down, we lose a lot of that contrast, and the watch face again becomes more of the focus and less of the background. So that's what I did there. I also, you're going to notice that it's mostly overlaid on the edges. So if we show the mask, you can see the red area is all the part where it's not going to be showing the curve layer, and the part where you can see the background in color, that is where it's affecting. Now, some of this is faded because I do a lot of feathering when I use layer masks like this, so it's a gradual shift. And then I just saved this file as a PSD and also as a JPEG. And the reason I do that is I save it as a PSD so that if I decide I need to do any further editing to the way I did this, I have it as a layered file. I do the JPEG because I'm going to add, basically I'm flattening the image so that I can do my other editing to it without having to worry about how it might affect all the layers or anything like that, because it's completely flat. It's going to affect everything exactly the same. So that's going to be the image I show you next, which is right here. So this is obviously the finished image. I'm just going to get rid of that because I don't need it. And we'll go all the way back to the beginning so you can see what we started with. So this is obviously exactly what you just saw in the other image. And then I slowly just added my editing style. So the first thing I did was add a matte layer. This is an action set that I've purchased that I use on a lot of my fine art pieces. And you guys know how much I love vignettes, so I then used one of my warm toned vignettes. You'll also see there's 3 layers here with layer masks that have black paint on them. And that's because I wanted to emphasize that directionality of light we had. So the first layer, it's a little subtle. They're all a little subtle. But this one gives you that very emphasized directionality of light. And I did end up adding in a little, or masking off a little bit more around the edges because it just got way too dark with all of them affecting it in this way. Second layer mask, same thing, it's super subtle. You really notice it more on this side here because it is, it's darkening down the side where the light's not going to be as strong because the light's coming from up here. So that's what that one does. So that's before, that is after. Another curves layer, and what this one is a color curves layer. So what you're noticing is the watch is looking a lot more yellow. I wanted it to feel a little more gold and warm. So you can see on this adjustment layer, you can see all the different colors and how I shifted them. So the red layer I pulled up a little bit at the center, and the blue layer I pulled down a little bit at the center, and I didn't affect the green layer at all. So that's how I made that adjustment to the color tone. The next curve layer was an overall tone drop, and I brought the middle down just a little bit because it was feeling just a little bit too bright for me and slightly contrasted. And then the last layer was just another one of those directional light layers where we're really darkening it down. So you can see it's coming from here a little bit more since that highlight on the watch is right here. We really wanted it to come down. I also didn't want you to lose me since I'm in all these dark clothes here. So highlighting it in that way helps keep me visible but still looking realistic. So yeah, that's how I completed this particular image on Delaying Time. If you want to read about the concept or any of that, you can find it on my blog at www.greentreemediaonline.com/WordPress. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if there's anything you'd like to see or have me share that too. I always like hearing from you guys. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!